It was raining the night Anya Volantes found the devil bleeding to death behind her veterinary clinic. He was covered in freezing rain and darker blood, snarling like a feral dog. He gave her a choice: stitch him up with fishing line and animal sedatives, or die. Anya didn't just save Dante Ferrum's life that night, she accidentally signed away her freedom. Because Dante isn't just a man, he's the Don of the Ferrum Syndicate, and now that she's seen his face, he's decided the safest place for his little savior is locked inside his penthouse. Forever. Chapter 1. The Alleyway. The rain in Chicago didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker, coating the city in a layer of freezing, oily sheen that seeped into the bones. Anya Volantes shoved the heavy metal lid of the dumpster closed, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the narrow alleyway behind Paws and Claw's veterinary clinic. She flinched, her shoulders hunching instinctively against the freezing downpour. It was 2:00 a.m. Her shift had technically ended at midnight, but a C-section on a bulldog with complications had kept her elbow deep in sterile fluids and panic until 10 minutes ago. Now, the adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the bone-deep, marrow-sucking tiredness that came from working 2 jobs to pay off a debt that never seemed to shrink. $50,000. That was the price of her father's gambling addiction. That was the price of her life. Every month she handed over an envelope of cash to a man named Sergei, a collector with dead eyes and a thick Russian accent who represented the Jerdev Bratva. And every month, the exorbitant interest rates ate the payment whole, leaving the principal untouched. The Jerdevs owned her. They owned her paycheck, her fear, and her future. Just go home, Anya, she told herself, shivering as the water soaked through her thin scrub top. Ramen. Sleep. 4 hours of rest, then the morning shift at the diner. You can do this. You have to do this because the alternative is a shallow grave. She turned to head back toward the clinic's rear security door, her sneakers squelching in the oily puddles. The alley was a throat of darkness between 2 brick buildings, illuminated only by a flickering yellow security light that buzzed like a dying insect. She took 2 steps toward safety, thinking of the warmth inside, and then she tripped. Her foot caught on something solid, something soft, something heavy. Anya gasped as she went down, scrambling for balance, her hands landing hard in a puddle. But the water wasn't cold. It was warm, thick, sticky. She froze. The smell hit her a second later. Not the smell of wet garbage or city smog, but the sharp, metallic tang of copper. It was a smell she knew intimately. She smelled it every day in surgery. Blood. Anya looked down. The obstacle she had tripped over was a man. He was massive, sprawled half behind a stack of wooden pallets, his long legs extending into the path. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than her entire veterinary education. Italian cut, charcoal wool, now ruined by the slick black sludge spreading beneath him. "Oh, God," she whispered, her voice trembling against the rain. "Sir? Sir? Can you hear me?" Her veterinary training kicked in before her survival instinct could scream at her to run. She crawled forward on her hands and knees, ignoring the rain plastering her hair to her face. He didn't move. His face was turned away, hidden in the shadows of the pallets, but his chest was heaving with shallow, ragged gasps. Anya reached out, her fingers pressing against the side of his neck, searching for a pulse. A low growl ripped through the air, and in a blur of motion a hand shot out. It wasn't the weak, trembling grasp of a dying man. It was a vice grip. His fingers locked around her wrist, crushing the delicate bones. Anya screamed, trying to yank back, but he was immovable, an anchor of muscle and violence. He turned his head, and lightning flashed overhead, illuminating a face that looked like it had been carved from granite and nightmares. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw shadowed by stubble, and eyes that were so dark they looked like voids. But it was the mouth that terrified her. His lips were pulled back in a snarl, blood coating his teeth. "Touch me," he rasped, his voice guttural and wet, "and you lose the hand." I'm trying to help you, Anya cried out, staring at his chest. You're bleeding. I know. He tried to sit up and failed, a groan of agony ripping from his throat. His free hand, the one not crushing her wrist, was pressed tight against his lower ribs. Dark fluid pulsed between his fingers with every beat of his heart. Anya's eyes locked onto the wound. In the dim light she saw the color. Bright red, oxygenated, moving with the heartbeat. That's not a vein, she thought, panic rising in her throat. That's an artery. You've been stabbed, she said, her voice shaking but authoritative. It nicked an artery. You have maybe 10 minutes before you bleed out. I'm calling 911. She reached into her pocket for her phone with her free hand. The metallic click of a gun cocking stopped her heart. She looked down. The man had produced a weapon from inside his ruined jacket, a matte black semi-automatic. It was shaking in his grip, the barrel wavering, but at this range, he couldn't miss. It was pointed directly at her chest. No cops, he snarled. No hospitals! You're dying, Anya shouted over the thunder. You need a surgeon. I said no hospitals. His grip on her wrist tightened, grinding bone together. Tears of pain pricked Anya's eyes, mixing with the rain. Okay, no hospitals. Just let me go. I won't tell anyone. Please, just let me go. He looked at her then. Really looked at her. His vision was swimming, the edges of his consciousness graying out, but he focused on her face. He saw the fear, yes, but he saw something else too. He saw her eyes flicking back to his wound, calculating, analyzing. She wasn't looking at him like a monster. She was looking at him like a broken puzzle that needed solving. What are you? He whispered. I'm a vet tech, she stammered. I work here. Please just let me leave. A vet? A dark, delirious laugh bubbled up in his chest, turning into a cough that sprayed blood onto the wet asphalt. Fitting. I've been told I'm an animal. The gun barrel lowered slightly, dipping toward his own lap as his strength faded, but he forced it back up. He was running on pure adrenaline and spite. Anya stared at him. She noticed his skin was turning gray. His lips were blue. He was going into hypovolemic shock. Sir, look at me, she said. If you don't let me call an ambulance, you are going to die in this garbage juice. Is that how you want to go? The man stared at her. He knew the situation better than she did. The Jerdev Bratva, the same Russians holding this girl's debt, though he didn't know that yet, had set him up. A meeting meant for peace had turned into an assassination attempt. A jagged blade in the ribs, a chaotic exit. If he went to a hospital, the police would log him. The Jerdevs would find him in the ICU and finish the job. Or the cops would arrest him and his empire would crumble while he sat in a cell. Death was preferable to a cage, but survival was better than both. Can you fix it? He asked. What? You stitch up dogs, don't you? Can you fix it? I'm not a doctor for humans, Anya protested. The anatomy is different. The anesthesia is different. Flesh is flesh, he muttered, his eyes rolling back for a second before he shook his head violently. Blood is blood. He leveled the gun at her one last time. I'm not going to a hospital, so here's the deal, little vet. You take me inside that clinic, you stop the bleeding, you stitch me up. I can't. Or I pull this trigger, drop you right here, and then I die next to you. Those are your options. Anya looked at the gun, looked at the blood pooling around his expensive leather shoes. She thought of her father. She thought of the debt. She thought of the fact that if she died here, nobody would even miss her until the bank realized her loan payment bounced. She looked at the wound. It was a mess, but she had closed worse. She had put a Doberman back together after it went through a plate glass window just last week. She took a deep breath, swallowing the scream building in her throat. If you shoot me, who's going to carry you inside? The man's lip twitched. a ghost of a smirk. Good point, get me up. No hospitals, he snarled again, blood coating his teeth. Fix me right here, little vet, or we both die in this rain. Chapter 2. Sutures and sin, moving a 6'4", 200-pound man composed entirely of muscle and dead weight, was not covered in the veterinary curriculum. Anya gritted her teeth, her shoulder wedged under his good arm. They stumbled through the back door of the clinic, leaving a trail of water and crimson droplets on the pristine linoleum. Walk, Anya yelled at him. You have to help me. I am walking, he groaned. He wasn't. He was dragging his feet, his body heat radiating through her wet scrubs like a furnace. He was burning up fast. Infection wasn't the worry yet. It was blood loss. She steered him toward the prep room. It was stainless steel, sterile and cold. The examination table stood in the center like a sacrificial altar. Up. Now, she commanded. With a final agonizing heave, she leveraged him onto the metal table. He landed with a heavy thud, groaning as the cold steel met his back. The gun clattered onto the metal tray beside him, making a terrifying metallic noise. His hand twitched toward it, but he was too weak to hold it. I need light, Anya said, flicking the switch. The overhead surgical lamps hummed to life, flooding the room with blinding, clinical white light. The man flinched, his eyes squeezing shut against the brightness. In the stark light, he looked even worse. His skin was the color of old ash. The suit jacket was soaked through, the expensive wool ruined beyond repair. I have to cut the clothes off, Anya said, grabbing a pair of heavy-duty trauma shears from the counter. She didn't wait for permission. The sound of the shears was sharp and decisive in the quiet room. Snip, snip, tear. She cut through the expensive wool of his jacket, then the silk of his dress shirt. She peeled the fabric away from the wound, wincing at the squelching sound it made. Damn it, she hissed. It was a puncture wound, just below the last rib on the left side. It was jagged. The blade had been twisted inside the flesh before being ripped out. How bad? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Bad, she admitted. It missed the lung, I think. No sucking sound, which means no pneumothorax, but it definitely hit an intercostal artery. You're lucky you're built like a tank, or the blade would have nicked your spleen. She moved fast now. Fear was still there, buzzing in her ears like a trapped fly, but her training was louder. This was a problem. Problems had solutions. She grabbed a bottle of betadine and a stack of sterile gauze. This is going to burn, she warned him, uncapping the bottle. Don't shoot me. Just do it. She poured the iodine solution directly into the wound. The liquid sizzled against the raw flesh. He arched off the table, a guttural roar tearing from his throat. His hand slammed onto the metal table, knuckles turning white. He didn't scream like a human. He roared like a lion caught in a trap. Stop moving, Anya shouted, pressing down on his chest with all her weight. You'll make it bleed faster. You little sadist, he panted, sweat beading on his forehead and mixing with the rain and blood. I'm sterilizing the field. Now listen to me. I can't stitch this while you're awake and thrashing. I need to sedate you. She moved to the locked cabinet, her fingers flying over the keypad. No, he gasped, trying to sit up. I stay awake. You can't. The pain will cause you to go into shock. I need to explore the wound to clamp the bleeder before I close the skin. If you move while I have a clamp inside you, I could sever a nerve. She pulled a vial from the shelf. Clear liquid. What is that? He demanded, eyeing the syringe with suspicion. Ketamine, she said, and a sedative cocktail we use for large breeds. You're giving me dog medicine? Technically, it's used for horses too, she said, drawing the liquid into the syringe. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, adjusting the dose. A full horse dose might stop a human heart, even one as strong as his. But a standard dose wouldn't touch a man running on this much adrenaline. She aimed for the middle, enough to knock out a Great Dane. It wouldn't keep him under for long, but it would buy her 20 minutes. She flicked the needle to clear the air bubbles. The man watched her. His vision was tunneling. He felt cold, so cold. He knew he should refuse. He knew letting a stranger knock him out was suicide. But looking at her, hair plastered to her face, hands steady despite the terror in her eyes, he felt a strange, foreign sensation. Trust? No. Curiosity. She was trembling, but her hands were rock steady. "If I don't wake up," he whispered, his eyes locking onto hers with terrifying intensity, "my men will burn the city to the ground to find you." "Dramatic," Anya muttered, swabbing his arm. "Hold still." She didn't hesitate. She jammed the needle into his deltoid muscle and depressed the plunger. The hiss of the syringe filled the quiet room. He grunted, trying to keep his eyes focused on her face. He wanted to memorize it. The curve of her jaw, the scar on her chin, the way her eyes were the color of whiskey held up to the light. "What's your, name?" he slurred, the drugs hitting him fast. "The person saving your life," she replied. His head fell back against the metal table. His hand went limp, releasing the gun he had snatched back from the tray. Anya quickly kicked the weapon under the counter. Out of sight. "Okay," she breathed out, shaking her hands to rid them of the tremors. "You're under. Let's work." She grabbed the electric razor. The buzz filled the room. She shaved a patch of dark hair around the wound on his torso. His skin was hot to the touch, fever already setting in. She scrubbed the area again. Then she gloved up. The snap of the latex sounded loud in the empty clinic. She picked up the hemostats. She had to go in. "Just like a Great Dane, Anya," she whispered to herself. "Just a really, really big Great Dane. Clamp the vessel, tie it off, flush, close." She dug her fingers into the wound. The blood was warm and slick. She felt the pulse of the severed vessel. With a wet squelching sound, she found it. "Gotcha." She clamped the artery. The bleeding slowed to a trickle. She grabbed the suture kit. It was heavy monofilament, fishing line basically. Thick, blue, waterproof. Not meant for delicate cosmetic surgery. It was meant to hold muscle together when a dog tried to rip its stitches out. It would leave a scar. A jagged, ugly scar. "Sorry, big guy," she murmured. "You're not going to be a model after this." She pierced his skin with the curved needle. Human skin was tough, tougher than she expected. She had to use force to drive the needle through. 1 stitch, 2 stitches, 3. She worked with a rhythm. Pierce, pull, knot. Pierce, pull, knot. The man groaned in his drugged sleep, his head thrashing side to side. "Anya," he mumbled. She froze. She hadn't told him her name. How did he know? She looked at her chest, her ID badge. Anya Volantes, vet tech. He had read it. Even while bleeding out. Even while dying. He had gathered intel. A shiver of true fear went down her spine. She tied the last knot. 12 stitches in total. Ugly black tracks against his pale skin. She cut the thread. "Done," she whispered. "You're alive." She grabbed a towel to wipe the blood from his abdomen. As she worked, cleaning him up, the adrenaline began to fade, leaving her shaking. She looked at the man on her table. He was beautiful, in a terrifying, ruinous way, like a fallen statue. She reached for the bandage roll. As she tied the final knot, the back door handle rattled. Heavy footsteps echoed outside in the alley. Dante's eyes flew open. They weren't groggy. They were blown wide with adrenaline, fighting through the drugs with sheer, impossible willpower. His hand shot out, grabbing Anya's wrist with bruising force. He hissed, his other hand already reaching under the counter, blindly finding the gun she thought she had hidden. "Turn off the lights," he rasped. "Now." Chapter 3. The Fever Dream. The room plunged into darkness as Anya flicked the switch. The only light came from the street lamps filtering through the high, frosted windows, casting long, skeletal shadows across the prep room. Anya stood pressed against the cold metal cabinets, the man's heavy body pinning her in place. He was burning up, his skin radiating heat through his ruined shirt, but his hand on the gun was steady. Outside, the handle rattled one last time. "Locks reinforced," a muffled voice said from the alley. Anya stiffened. She recognized the accent. It was thick, Russian, and cruel. It wasn't Sergei, her usual collector, but it was unmistakably Jurdev. The men she owed money to were outside her door. "Should we blast it?" the voice asked. Anya whimpered against the hand covering her mouth. The man's grip tightened, not to hurt her, but to silence her. His other arm, the one on his injured side, was braced against the counter to keep him upright. Fresh blood began to bloom on the white bandages she had just applied. "No," a second voice answered. "Too much noise. Cops patrol this sector at 3 a.m. Check the perimeter. If he's in there, he's bleeding out. We'll wait him out or catch him when he runs." Footsteps receded into the wet gravel, fading away into the sound of the rain. Silence returned to the clinic, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the man's ragged breathing. He waited a full 2 minutes. Then, slowly, he lowered the gun. He didn't step back, though. He leaned his forehead against hers, his weight becoming too much for him to support. "They're gone," he whispered. "For now." "You ripped your stitches," Anya said, looking at the red stains spreading on his side. "I'll live." He tried to push himself off her, but his knees buckled. Anya caught him, grunting under the sudden weight. The ketamine was finally winning the war against his adrenaline. "You can't stay here," she said frantically. "If they come back, if they break in, I need—" "A secure location," he gasped. "My phone, destroyed in the rain." "I live next door," Anya said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "The building attached to the clinic, it's not much, but there's a hidden service door connecting the clinic basement to my building's laundry room. They won't see us leave." The man looked down at her in the dark. She was offering him sanctuary. This terrified little bird was inviting the wolf into her nest. "Lead the way," he said. Moving him a second time was harder than the first. They navigated the dark basement, damp and smelling of mold, until they reached the service door. Anya fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking until the lock clicked. They emerged into the laundry room of her apartment building, a crumbling tenement attached to the back of the commercial strip, and took the service elevator up one floor. Anya's apartment was the size of a shoebox, a studio with peeling wallpaper, a radiator that hissed like a snake, and a futon that served as both couch and bed. It smelled of lemon cleaner and poverty. She helped him toward the futon. He collapsed onto it, the springs groaning in protest. He was too big for the space. He made the room feel claustrophobic. "I don't have guest linens," Anya mumbled, grabbing a throw blanket. "You get the duvet?" He didn't answer. The adrenaline was crashing, and the ketamine was finally pulling him under. The fever was spiking hard. His teeth began to chatter. "Cold," he stuttered. "It's the shock," Anya said, going into nurse mode, "and the blood loss." She grabbed the duvet from her bed and draped it over him. Then she ran to the kitchenette, filled a bowl with cool water, and grabbed a rag. When she returned, he was shivering violently. "I need to get these wet clothes off you," she said softly. "You're freezing to death in them." He didn't fight her this time. He was barely conscious. Anya worked quickly. She unbuckled his belt, expensive leather, heavy silver buckle, and pulled off his shoes. She peeled the rest of the ruined shirt from his shoulders. That's when she saw it. In the clinic, under the bright lights, she had been focused on the wound. She had seen blood and skin. But here, in the dim light of her apartment, she saw the ink. It started at his hip, snaked up his ribs, and sprawled across his pectoral muscle on the right side, the uninjured side. It was a masterpiece of violence. A wolf, rendered in black and gray realism, its jaws open, devouring a son. Iron chains were woven through the wolf's fur. "No." Anya breathed, the word leaving her lips on a cloud of pure terror. She knew that symbol. Everyone in the city knew that symbol. The Iron Wolf. Ferrum. Her father hadn't just gambled away his savings. He had gambled on illegal fight rings run by the Jurdev Bratva. But the Ferrum family, they were the Italians. They were the kings of Chicago. They were the law that kept the other gangs in check. They were the mortal enemies of the men holding her debt. And the man lying on her futon, the man she had just drugged and stitched up, wasn't a foot soldier. She looked at the ink again. The wolf had a crown of thorns. "The Dawn," she whispered, covering her mouth with her hand to stifle a sob. She had saved Dante Ferrum, the Dawn of the Ferrum Syndicate. If the Jurdevs, the men currently standing outside her clinic, found out she helped him, they wouldn't just break her legs like they threatened last week. They would skin her alive for aiding the enemy. And if he found out who she was, if he found out she was paying protection money to the Russians, the man stirred. His eyes cracked open, glassy and fever-bright. He saw her backing away. He saw the terror on her face. He looked down at his own bare chest, then back at her. He knew that look. It was the look of a prey animal realizing it was trapped in the cage with the predator. He tried to speak, to charm her, or threaten her, or thank her. He wasn't sure which, but his voice was a rasp. "Water." Anya froze. She could run. She could run right now. Leave the apartment. Leave the city. But she had no money. She had $12 in her bank account, and he had seen her face. He knew her name. Anya Volantes. She walked back to the kitchenette. Her hand shook so hard water spilled over the rim of the glass. She returned to the futon and knelt beside him, lifting his head carefully. "Drink," she whispered. He drank, his eyes never leaving hers. He gripped her wrist again. But this time his thumb brushed over the pulse point on the inside of her wrist. A caress? A threat? "You saw the ink," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," she replied, "and you're still here." "I took an oath," she said, her voice trembling, "to do no harm." "Even to monsters?" he asked. "Especially to monsters," she whispered. "They bite the hardest when they're hurt." His lips quirked up. The ketamine was finally dragging him down into the dark, but he fought it for one last moment. "Smart girl," he murmured. His hand slid from her wrist, falling limp onto the duvet. His breathing evened out into the heavy rhythm of sleep. Anya sat back on her heels, staring at him. She was trapped. She reached for her purse on the counter, intending to check her phone to see if there was any news about a gang war in the city. As she moved her purse, a piece of paper fluttered to the floor. It was the "past due" notice from the Jurdev loan shark. Bright red letters. "Payment due. 24 hours, or we take collateral." Anya looked at the paper. Then she looked at the man on her couch. She traced the ink on his skin, the Iron Wolf, with her eyes. Ice filled her veins. She hadn't just saved a criminal. She'd saved Dante Ferrum, the mortal enemy of the men her father owed $50,000 to. If the Jurdevs found her, she was dead. If Dante woke up and found out who she paid, she was dead. She was standing on a razor's edge, and the only way off was down. Chapter 4. The Awakening. Dante Ferrum woke up to the smell of stale coffee, damp plaster, and impending ruin. Consciousness didn't return to him gently. It slammed into him like a freight train, bringing with it a symphony of pain centered on his left side. He didn't move. Years of sleeping with a gun under his pillow, or in this case a gun he had instinctively reclaimed before passing out, had taught him that movement gave away position, and position was leverage. He kept his breathing shallow, testing the limits of his body. The fire in his ribs was duller now, a throbbing ache rather than a sharp scream, which meant the drugs were still in his system. Ketamine. The little vet had dosed him with enough sedative to drop a large animal. His head felt like it was stuffed with cotton wool, his limbs heavy and unresponsive. It took a supreme effort of will just to open his eyes. He wasn't in the clinic anymore. The ceiling above him was stained with water damage, the plaster peeling in jagged strips that looked like topographic maps of a dead country. He turned his head slowly, fighting the nausea that rolled in his gut. The room was the size of a walk-in closet in his penthouse. A kitchenette was crammed into one corner, featuring a radiator that hissed and clanked like a dying engine and a window covered by a thin, yellowing sheet. He was lying on a futon that smelled of lemon cleaner and exhaustion. Dante sat up. The movement tore a grunt from his throat and the room spun violently. He gripped the edge of the mattress, waiting for the black spots in his vision to clear. He looked down at his chest. The bandages were clean, wrapped with professional precision. She had done good work. Where is she? He scanned the room. It was empty, but it felt lived in. Cluttered. Not with trash, but with the debris of a life being lived on the razor's edge of poverty. Textbooks on veterinary medicine were stacked on the floor, their spines broken and taped together. A uniform for a diner hung over the back of a chair. It was a life of struggle. He knew this kind of poverty. He had clawed his way out of it 20 years ago, and seeing it now felt like looking at a ghost. He forced himself to stand. His legs felt like lead, the after effects of the dissociative aesthetic making the floor feel tilted. He stumbled toward the kitchenette, using the wall for support. The refrigerator hummed loudly. He opened it. Empty. A half-gallon of milk that smelled sour, a jar of pickles, and a single lonely egg, no food. He closed the door and looked at the counter. There was a pile of envelopes, bills, final notices. The red ink screamed at him. Past due. Immediate action required. His hand hovered over a crumpled piece of paper near the sink. He picked it up. It was a handwritten note, scrawled in heavy marker on the back of a greasy napkin. $50K. Friday. Or we take the girl. Dante's blood went cold, a different kind of chill than the shock of blood loss. He recognized the handwriting. Not the specific penmanship, but the style. The aggressive loops, the heavy pressure. It was Zherdev, intimidation tactics. He looked around the apartment with new eyes. This wasn't just a struggling student. This was a woman drowning in her father's mistakes. She was paying protection money to the Zherdev Bratva, the very same family that had tried to put a knife in Dante's heart last night. The irony was bitter enough to taste. She had saved him, the mortal enemy of her tormentors. If the Zherdevs knew she had the Iron Wolf on her futon, they wouldn't wait until Friday. They would come for her now. They would peel her apart just to get to him. The sound of a key in the lock made him freeze. The door creaked open. Anya stepped in, carrying a plastic grocery bag and looking like she hadn't slept in a week. Her eyes were rimmed with red, her shoulders slumped. She froze when she saw him standing there, swaying slightly, but upright. She looked at his face, then down at the note in his hand. All the color drained from her cheeks. "You're awake," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the fridge. Dante didn't answer immediately. He watched her. She was terrified, trembling like a leaf in a storm, yet she carefully closed the door and locked it behind her. She was protecting him even now. "You didn't run," he said, his voice rough from disuse and dehydration. "You could have left while I was out. Called the cops. Left me to rot." "I told you," she said, clutching the grocery bag like a shield. "I took an oath." Dante stepped forward. The apartment was so small that 2 steps brought him into her personal space. He towered over her, consuming the oxygen in the room. He saw her eyes flick to the wolf tattoo on his chest, visible through the unbuttoned shirt he had salvaged from the floor. "You know who I am," he said. Anya swallowed hard. "Yes. And you know who wrote this note?" He held up the napkin. "Yes." Dante crumpled the note in his fist. His mind was racing, calculating variables, risks, and assets. The Jardevs had compromised the meeting. They had breached his security. He didn't know who in his own organization he could trust, which meant he was vulnerable. But this girl had no loyalty to anyone but her own survival code, and she had passed a test most of his soldiers would have failed. She had saved him when she held all the cards. But she was a loose end. A civilian who had seen the dawn of the Ferrum Syndicate bleeding and vulnerable. A civilian who lived next door to the crime scene. A civilian who was currently being hunted by his enemies. He couldn't leave her here. If he walked out that door, the Jardevs would find her. They would verify the blood trail ended at her clinic. They would torture her to find out what she knew. And she would talk. Everyone talked eventually. There was only one solution. He stood up straighter, ignoring the pull of his stitches and the vertigo. "You know my face. You know my wounds." He reached into his pocket. His phone was dead, destroyed by the rain. He reached into her pocket instead. Anya gasped, shrinking back, but he was too fast. He pulled out her cracked smartphone. He dialed a number from memory. It rang once. "Silas," he said, his voice dropping into the command tone that made grown men wet themselves. "Bring the car. GPS trace the signal. And bring a containment team. I have a package." Chapter 5. The Abduction. The 20 minutes it took for Silas to arrive were the longest of Anya's life. Dante didn't speak. He sat on her single sturdy chair, the gun resting casually on his knee, watching the street through the crack in the curtains. Anya stood by the sink, clutching the grocery bag she hadn't put down. It contained a loaf of bread and a bottle of generic ibuprofen, supplies for a recovery she realized she wouldn't be overseeing. He called it a containment team, she thought, panic fluttering in her chest like a trapped bird. That's what they call it when they clean up a mess. I'm the mess. She looked at the knife block on the counter, a dull paring knife and a bread knife. Useless against a man who looked like he chewed glass for breakfast. Even injured, even drugged, he radiated a lethal competence that terrified her. "We need to go," Dante said suddenly, standing up. "They're here." Anya didn't hear a siren. She didn't hear tires screeching. She just felt a change in the air pressure of the building, a heaviness that settled over the hallway. Dante unlocked the door and pulled it open. Standing in the hallway was a mountain. The man was at least 6'7", with a shaved head and a beard that hid the lower half of his face. He wore a black tactical suit that strained against muscles built for violence. This was Silas Volkov, the Ferrum enforcer, the fixer. "Boss," Silas rumbled. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together in a mixer. He looked Dante over, his eyes lingering on the bandages visible under the ruined shirt. "You look like hell." "I feel worse," Dante said, leaning against the doorframe as a wave of dizziness hit him. "Is the perimeter secure?" "Clean." Silas shifted his gaze to Anya. It was like being looked at by a shark. There was no malice, just a cold, predatory assessment. She felt small, fragile, erasable. "The girl?" Silas asked. "Coming with us." "Bucket or back seat?" The question hung in the air, brutal and efficient. Bucket meant dead. Back seat meant alive. "Back seat," Dante said. Anya let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She wasn't dying. Not yet. "Grab your things," Dante commanded, turning to her. I don't... Essentials only. You're not coming back here." The finality of his tone snapped her out of her paralysis. Not coming back? This apartment was a dump, but it was her dump. It was the only place she had felt safe since her father died. She scrambled to grab her backpack, shoving her textbooks inside. She grabbed the photo of her parents from the nightstand. She grabbed her uniform. Suddenly, the front door to the building slammed downstairs. Footsteps, light, hurried, echoed up the stairwell. "Anya, are you home?" "I forgot my keys again." Anya's heart stopped. Zelia, Zelia Cruz was her roommate, best friend, and the only spot of sunshine in Anya's gray life. She worked double shifts as a bartender and had a mouth that got her into trouble faster than her legs could get her out of it. She wasn't supposed to be home until noon. "Go," Dante ordered Silas. "Clear the hall." Silas turned just as Zelia rounded the corner of the landing. She stopped dead. She was wearing bright pink rain boots and a coat that was too thin for the weather, holding a bag of takeout. She looked from the giant Silas to the bloodied Dante and then to Anya cowering in the doorway. Most people would scream. Most people would run. Zelia Cruz dropped her takeout bag and reached into her purse for pepper spray. "Let her go," Zelia screamed, aiming the canister at Silas's chest. Silas didn't even blink. He stepped forward, closing the distance in one stride. Zelia sprayed. Silas simply turned his head, took the mist on his shoulder, and snatched the canister from her hand like he was taking a toy from a toddler. "Hey!" Zelia shouted, kicking him in the shin. It was like kicking a telephone pole. Silas looked down at her, bemused. He grabbed her by the back of her coat and lifted her effortlessly, moving her out of the doorway like she was a piece of furniture. "Feisty," Silas grunted. "Don't hurt her," Anya screamed, rushing forward. She threw herself between Dante and Zelia. "Please, she doesn't know anything. She just lives here." Dante looked at Zelia. He saw the fire in her eyes. She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for Anya. Loyalty. He respected that. "Silas," Dante said quietly, "we're leaving. Secure her." "Secure her?" Silas asked, looking at the struggling woman in his grip. "She saw us," Dante said. "If the Zerdevs come looking for Anya, they'll find her roommate. They'll break her to find out where Anya went." Anya went cold. "No. No. Leave her out of this." "I'm saving her life, Anya," Dante said, his voice low. He turned to Silas. "Take her to the safe house on the west side. Keep her off the grid. If the Zerdevs think she's missing, they can interrogate her." "Got it," Silas said. He shifted his grip on Zelia, covering her mouth with a massive hand as she tried to scream. "Sleep now, little firecracker." Silas applied pressure to a point on Zelia's neck. Her eyes rolled back, and she went limp in his arms. "Zelia," Anya cried, lunging forward. Dante caught her arm. "She's not dead. She's unconscious. Silas will keep her safe. Safer than she would be here with you gone." "You're kidnapping us both," Anya whispered, horror dawning on her. "I'm cleaning up a mess," Dante said, his face hardening. "Move." Silas carried the unconscious Zelia down the stairs like a sack of flour, heading for a separate support vehicle. Dante ushered Anya toward the armored black SUV idling at the curb. Anya climbed in. The interior smelled of leather and gun oil. Dante slid in beside her. He winced as he settled into the seat, his hand going to his side. Silas, having deposited Zelia with his team, took the wheel of the SUV. The car pulled away smoothly, merging into the traffic. Anya sat with her backpack clutched to her chest, trembling violently. She was kidnapped. Her best friend was gone. And she was in a car with the most dangerous men in Chicago. Dante guided her into the back of the armored SUV. As the locks clicked shut, sealing them in soundproof silence, he leaned close. The smell of his blood was overpowering in the enclosed space. "Stop shaking, Anya," he murmured. "I can't," she whispered. "You're going to kill me." He let out a short, dark laugh. "If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have let you touch me. You're not a prisoner. You're an asset." Chapter 6. The Gilded Cage. The drive took 40 minutes. They left the crumbling tenements and cracked sidewalks of Anya's world, transitioning to the glass and steel canyons of downtown, and finally climbing the winding roads to the Gold Coast. The Ferrum estate wasn't a house. It was a fortress disguised as a mansion. High stone walls, topped with iron spikes, and probably sensors, surrounded the property. Heavy wrought iron gates swung open silently as the SUV approached, revealing a long driveway lined with ancient oaks that stripped their leaves in the wind. The house itself was a sprawling Gothic revival monster of dark stone and sharp angles. It looked cold. It looked like a mausoleum for the living. Silas parked the car under the portico. "Get him inside," Silas said to Anya, nodding at Dante. "I need to brief the security team on the breach." Anya scrambled out and went to Dante's side. He was moving slower now. The adrenaline from the apartment had faded, leaving him gray-faced and sweating. He leaned heavily on her as they walked up the front steps. Inside, the house was silent. The foyer was a cavern of black marble and crystal chandeliers. It was beautiful, immaculate, and utterly devoid of warmth. There were no photos on the walls, no coats on the rack. It felt like a museum where touching was forbidden. "Upstairs," Dante grunted. "Master suite." They took the elevator, an elevator in a house, Anya marveled numbly, to the 3rd floor. The master bedroom was larger than her entire apartment building. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan, the gray water churning in the storm. A massive bed dominated the center of the room, covered in black silk sheets. Dante collapsed onto the edge of the bed. "Medical kit," he rasped, pointing to the ensuite bathroom. "Under the sink." Anya ran. The bathroom was a temple of white marble and chrome. She found the kit. It wasn't a standard first aid box. It was a tactical trauma kit. She brought it back to the bedroom. "Shirt off," she ordered, her voice trembling but finding its footing in the familiar rhythm of treatment. Dante unbuttoned the ruined shirt and let it drop to the floor. Anya hissed in a breath. The movement and the car ride had caused the wound to seep. The bandages were soaked. "I need to change the dressing," she said. "And I need to check the stitches. Lie back." Dante obeyed, his eyes watching her every move. Anya peeled back the blood-soaked gauze. The wound was angry, the skin around it red and inflamed, but the fishing-line sutures were holding. "You're lucky," she muttered, cleaning the area with antiseptic. "It's not infected yet, but you need antibiotics. Strong ones." "There's Kipro in the kit," Dante said. Of course there is, she thought. As she worked, she was acutely aware of him. His body was a map of violence. The wolf tattoo she had seen earlier was just the centerpiece. There were scars everywhere, bullet wounds on his shoulder, knife slashes on his arms, burn marks on his ribs. He was a man who had survived 1,000 wars, and he was watching her. Not with gratitude, but with a burning, intense curiosity that made her skin prickle. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked, taping fresh gauze over the wound. "Because you're an anomaly," Dante said quietly. "You're terrified. I can hear your heart hammering from here, but your hands, they don't shake when you work." Anya pulled back, stripping off her gloves. "I'm doing my job. Now can I go? You're safe. You have your guards. You have your fortress. Let me go home." Dante sat up slowly. The air in the room shifted, becoming heavy and charged. "No." Anya felt the panic clawing at her throat again. "What do you mean, no? I saved your life. We had a deal." "The deal was no hospitals," Dante corrected. "I kept my end. You're not in jail." "But I'm a prisoner." "You're a guest." "Guests can leave," Anya shouted, backing toward the door. "I have a life. I have a job. I have bills to pay." Dante stood up. Despite his injury, he moved with the predatory grace of a jungle cat. He crossed the room and slammed his hand against the doorframe, blocking her exit. He pinned her there, his body inches from hers. She could feel the heat radiating off him, smell the soap and blood and danger. "Why won't you let me go?" she screamed, looking up into his dark voids of eyes. Dante pinned her against the wall, careful of his wound, but using his size to dominate the space. "Because the men who stabbed me used a Zherdev blade. And I found your father's debt ledger on your counter. The people hunting me are the same ones hunting you." Anya stopped breathing. He knew. He knew everything. "You..." You went through my things? I assessed the threat environment, he said coldly. You owe the Zhurdevs $50,000. You missed a payment last month. They've been threatening to take collateral. Anya looked down, shame burning her cheeks. I'm handling it. You're drowning, Dante said, his voice dropping to a whisper that vibrated in her chest. And now you've involved yourself in my war. If I let you walk out that door, the Zhurdevs will pick you up within the hour. They'll torture you to find out where I am. And then they'll kill you to send a message. I won't tell them anything. They won't give you a choice, he roared, the sudden volume making her flinch. He leaned closer, his forehead resting against the doorframe next to her head. You saved my life, Anya. That makes you my responsibility. And the Ferrum family protects what is ours. I'm not yours, she whispered. Dante looked at her, his eyes traveling from her trembling lips to the pulse fluttering in her neck. You are now. Chapter 7. The External Threat. Hours passed. Anya was given a room down the hall, a guest suite that was larger than her entire apartment, filled with furniture that looked too expensive to sit on. She paced the floor, feeling like a trapped animal. The windows were locked. The door wasn't locked, but there were guards in the hallway. Silas had posted 2 men at the top of the stairs. She was safe, technically, but she felt suffocated. Around 8 p.m., a knock came at the door. Enter, she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Dante walked in. He had showered and changed. He wore fresh black sweatpants and a loose t-shirt that hid the bandages but clung to his shoulders. He looked less like a monster and more like a man, a tired, injured man. But the intensity in his eyes hadn't dimmed. Come with me, he said. Where? My study. There's something you need to see. Anya followed him down the long and silent hallway. The study was a room of dark mahogany and leather, smelling of old paper and whiskey. One wall was dominated by a bank of monitors displaying security feeds from around the estate and elsewhere. Dante walked to the desk and tapped a keyboard. One of the large monitors flickered to life. It was a grainy black and white feed from a street camera. Anya squinted. It looked familiar. The cracked sidewalk, the flickering streetlight, the peeling brick facade. That's my apartment building, she said. Watch, Dante said. The timestamp on the video was from 2 hours ago. A black van pulled up to the curb. 4 men jumped out. They weren't wearing masks. They didn't care who saw them. They carried baseball bats and gas cans. Anya's hand flew to her mouth. No! She watched as they kicked in the front door of the building. Minutes passed. Then they came running out. Flames licked at the windows of the second floor. Her floor. The fire spread instantly, fueled by the accelerant. The windows blew out, showering glass onto the street. Black smoke billowed into the sky. My things, Anya whispered, tears blurring her vision. My dad's photos. My books. Dante watched her, his face impassive. Zelia wasn't there, he said. Silas has her at the safe house. The apartment was empty. But it was everything I had, Anya sobbed, watching the only home she had left turn into an inferno. Why? Why did they do this? Because they couldn't find you, Dante said. This is a flush. They're burning your burrow to force the rabbit into the open. He turned the monitor off, plunging the room back into shadows. They burned it, Anya whispered. The image of the fire seared into her retinas. She watched her life turn to ash on the screen. They missed, Dante said darkly, stepping closer to her. Because you were with me. Now do you understand? You don't leave this house until every Zhurdev is in the ground. Anya looked up at him. The anger she had felt earlier evaporated, replaced by a cold, hollow realization. He was right. If she had stayed, she would be dead. Or worse. The debt she owed the Zhurdevs had turned into a death sentence the moment she saved Dante. You saved me, she said softly. By kidnapping me? You saved me. I secured an asset, Dante corrected, though his voice lacked its usual bite. What happens now? She asked. I have nothing. No home, no clothes, no money. Dante reached out. For a second she thought he was going to touch her face. His hand hovered near her cheek, fingers twitching, before he pulled back. Now, we go to war, and until the war is over, you stay here. You eat my food. You sleep under my roof. And you keep me alive so I can kill them for you. Kill them for me? Anya, he said, his voice dropping to a low growl. They burned your home. They threatened your life. When I am done with the Jerdevs, they will wish they had died in that fire. Chapter 8. The Domestic Lull. Before the Storm. 3 weeks passed. The Ferrum estate became a strange, suspended reality for Anya. It was a gilded cage, yes, but it was a comfortable one. She had access to the library, the kitchen, where the chef was terrified of her because the Don actually spoke to her, and the grounds. She fell into a routine. In the morning, she checked Dante's wound. It was healing nicely, the angry red fading to pink. The stitches came out on day 10, leaving a jagged scar that she traced with her fingertips, feeling a strange sense of ownership over the flesh she had knit back together. Dante was busy. He spent his days in the study, planning, shouting into phones, meeting with Silas. The war with the Jerdevs was escalating. There were drive-bys, warehouse fires, seizures of assets. But inside the walls it was quiet. Anya found her solace in the backyard. She had noticed them on her first day. 2 massive cane corsos named Brutus and Nero. They were trained guard dogs, living weapons with cropped ears and eyes that tracked movement like radar. The staff was terrified of them. The kennel master used a catch pole to feed them. Anya didn't. On the 3rd week, Dante stood on the balcony of his study, overlooking the expansive rear gardens. He held a tumbler of scotch, the amber liquid catching the light of the setting sun. Down below, near the dog run, he saw Anya. She was wearing a thick sweater she had borrowed from his closet. It swallowed her small frame. And leggings. She was inside the enclosure. Dante's heart hammered against his ribs. He gripped the railing. If those dogs turned on her? But they weren't attacking. Nero, the larger male, was lying on his back, his massive paws in the air. Anya was scratching his belly, murmuring to him in a soft, melodic voice. Brutus was sitting at her feet, leaning his heavy head against her thigh, eyes closed in bliss. She wasn't afraid of them. She handled them with the same calm, competent authority she had used on Dante in the alley. She checked their ears, looked at their teeth, ran her hands over their flanks, checking for ticks. Dante watched, mesmerized. He had bought those dogs to be killers. He had only ever seen them snarl and bite. Yet here was this tiny woman, taming his monsters with nothing but gentle hands and a soft voice. She looked up. Her eyes met his across the distance. She didn't look away. She smiled, a small, hesitant thing that hit him in the chest harder than the Jerdev knife. Dante set his drink down and walked out of the study. He went downstairs through the patio doors and across the lawn. Anya stood up as he approached, dusting dirt from her knees. The dogs immediately stood at attention, sensing the alpha, but they didn't growl. They stayed close to Anya, protective. They like you, Dante said, stopping a few feet away. They were lonely, Anya said, stroking Nero's velvet ear. They're working dogs, Dante. They need a job, but they also need a pack. You keep them isolated. But it makes them neurotic. Are you diagnosing my security system? I'm diagnosing your pets. They aren't robots. Dante stepped closer. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gold. The air was crisp, smelling of fallen leaves and wood smoke. You have a habit of saving things that can kill you, he said softly. Anya looked up at him. He was healed now. The color had returned to his face. He was powerful, magnetic, and undeniably dangerous. "Maybe I just see what they could be if they weren't in pain," she said. "Is that what you see in me?" The question hung between them, heavy and intimate. Anya didn't retreat. She stepped closer, closing the gap. "I see a man who thinks he has to be a monster to survive." "And am I?" "I don't know yet." Dante reached out. This time he didn't pull back. His hand cupped her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. His skin was rough, calloused from weapons and violence, but his touch was impossibly gentle. "You should be afraid of me, Anya." "I am," she whispered. "But not right now." Dante's gaze dropped to her lips. He felt a hunger that had nothing to do with food and everything to do with possession. He wanted to wrap her in his world, keep her in his house, make her forget the debt and the poverty and the fear. He wanted to be the only thing she saw. He leaned in. She tilted her head back, her eyes fluttering shut, her breath hitched, a small, inviting sound that shattered his control. His lips brushed hers, soft and dangerous, tasting of scotch and longing. "Anya," he breathed, his voice a prayer and a curse. She waited for the kiss. She wanted it. She needed to know what the devil tasted like. Suddenly, his phone shattered the silence. The ringtone was shrill, violent, cutting through the twilight like a siren. Dante pulled back, the spell broken. He swore viciously and pulled the phone from his pocket. He looked at the screen. "Silas," he answered, his voice shifting instantly from lover to dawn. "Report." Anya watched his face. In a split second, the warmth vanished. His eyes went cold. His jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped in his cheek. The monster was back. Dante listened for another second, then looked at Anya. The look in his eyes made her blood run cold. It was pity and rage. Silas's voice on the other end was loud enough for her to hear in the quiet garden. "Boss, we have a problem. The Zherdevs made a move. We intercepted a transmission." "What did they take?" Dante asked, his eyes never leaving hers. "Not what, boss. Who? They claim they have Zelia." Chapter 9. The Trap. The garden was silent, but the air around Anya felt shattered. The words Silas had spoken, "They claim they have Zelia," hung in the twilight like toxic smoke, poisoning the fragile peace that had settled over the estate. Dante didn't scream. He didn't throw his phone. He went terrifyingly still. It was a stillness Anya was beginning to recognize. It wasn't peace. It was the calm before a predator struck. He looked at her, and the warmth that had been in his eyes moments ago, the heat of the almost kiss, was gone. It was replaced by a tactical, icy calculation that made him look less like a man and more like a weapon. "Inside," he ordered. "Now." Anya followed him back into the house, her legs feeling like lead. They went straight to the study. Silas was already there, his massive frame hunched over the desk, pulling up maps on the large monitors. "Where is she?" Anya asked, her voice trembling. "Where did they take her?" "They sent a location," Silas rumbled, not looking up from his screen. "A warehouse in the industrial district, Sector 4. It's Zherdev territory." "It's a trade," Dante said, staring at the map. "Me," Anya whispered, the realization settling in her stomach like a stone. "They want me." Dante turned to her. "No, they want to draw me out. You are the bait, Anya. Zelia is just the leverage. They know that if they hurt your friend, you'll beg me to intervene. And if I intervene, I walk into a kill box." "Then we have to go." "We have to save her." "We will," Dante said, his voice hard, "but we do it my way. Silas, mobilize the strike team. I want the perimeter locked down. We go in heavy at midnight." "Midnight?" Anya screamed. "That's 4 hours away. What are they doing to her right now? They're hurting her." "We need intel," Dante snapped. "If we walk in blind, Zelia dies, I die, and you die. We wait." He turned to Silas. "Lock her in her room. Put a guard on the door. She doesn't leave this house." "What?" No! Anya grabbed Dante's arm. You can't lock me up. She's my best friend. She's only in this mess because of me. Dante looked down at her hand on his arm. He didn't shake her off, but he covered her hand with his grip firm. And that is why you are compromised. You're emotional. You'll make a mistake. He leaned down, his eyes boring into hers. I will get her back, Anya. I promise you. But you stay here where it's safe. Silas, take her. Silas stepped forward, his massive hand settling gently but firmly on her shoulder. Anya looked at Dante one last time, pleading with her eyes, but the dawn had returned. The man who had almost kissed her in the garden was gone. Anya allowed herself to be marched to her room. She heard the heavy click of the lock. She heard the footsteps of the guard taking position outside. She paced the room for an hour, nausea churning in her stomach. Every minute that ticked by was a minute Zelia was terrified, hurt, or worse. She imagined Zelia's face, brave, loud, loyal Zelia, being struck. She imagined the Jurdevs asking where Anya was. This is my fault, she thought. All of it. I saved a monster, and now the monster's enemies are eating my world. Her phone buzzed. Anya froze. Dante had confiscated her phone weeks ago, but this wasn't her phone. It was an old burner phone she had found in the pocket of the coat she'd borrowed from the closet earlier. One of Dante's old tactical jackets. She had forgotten it was there until it vibrated against her hip. She pulled it out. Unknown number. She answered, her breath caught in her throat. Hello? Anya. The voice was unrecognizable, distorted, electronic. If you want your friend to live, you will leave the house. Now. Who is this? Come alone. The warehouse on 4th and King. You have 30 minutes. If you are not there, we send our head to the dawn in a box. The line went dead. Anya stared at the phone. It was a trap. She knew it was a trap. Dante had said it was a trap, but Dante was waiting until midnight. They gave her 30 minutes. She looked at the heavy oak door. Locked. Guarded. She looked at the window. It was a 3-story drop to the patio, but there was a trellis. Heavy ivy, thick as her wrist, climbed the stone facade. Anya didn't think. She didn't calculate. She just moved. She tied her hair back. She opened the window. The wind whipped into the room, cold and biting. She swung her leg over the sill. Don't look down. Just don't look down. The descent was a nightmare. The ivy tore at her hands, scraping her palms raw. Twice her foot slipped, sending a shower of loose stone clattering to the patio below. She froze, heart hammering against her ribs, waiting for the shout, the gunshot, the dogs. But the dogs knew her. As she hit the ground, rolling into the shadows, Brutus trotted up to her, his tail wagging low. He nudged her hand. Anya pressed a finger to her lips. Shh, she whispered. Good boy. Stay. She skirted the edge of the property, sticking to the blind spot she had learned from watching the monitors in Dante's study. The gate was the problem. She couldn't open it without triggering an alarm. But the delivery entrance, the one the kitchen staff used. She found the keypad. She didn't know the code. But she knew that Chef Marco had greasy fingers, and the numbers 1, 3, and 5 were worn down more than the others. She tried 1 to 3 to 5, 5. Nothing. She tried 3, 1, 5, 1. Nothing. She tried 5, 1 to 3, 1. Click. The heavy metal pedestrian gate buzzed. Anya pushed it open and slipped out into the night. She ran for a mile until she found a gas station. She called a cab with the last of the cash she had stashed in her backpack weeks ago. The ride to the industrial district took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of agonizing fear. When the cab dropped her off, the warehouse loomed ahead like the skeleton of a dead beast. It was dark, silent, and smelling of rust and river water. Anya's phone buzzed again. Come in. Front door's open. She walked toward the gaping maw of the entrance. Her hands were shaking, but she forced them into fists at her sides. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't a hero. She was just a vet tech who loved her friend. "I'm here," she called out, her voice echoing in the vast, empty space. She stepped inside. The warehouse was cavernous, illuminated by a single floodlight hanging from the rafters. Dust motes danced in the beam. "I'm here. Let her go." The sound of slow clapping echoed from the shadows. A man stepped into the light. He was short, thick-set, with a face that looked like it had been smashed with a brick and put back together wrong. He wore a pristine white suit that stood out against the grime. This was Ivan Gerdev, the capo, the man who had been sending the debt collectors to her apartment for months. He smiled, and the light caught the gold and rot in his mouth. "Anya," he purred, "you are punctual. I like that." "Where is she?" Anya demanded, looking around frantically. "Where is Zelia?" Ivan chuckled. He snapped his fingers. 2 massive guards stepped out of the darkness behind him. But they weren't holding Zelia. They were holding assault rifles. "We checked your apartment," Ivan said, walking slowly toward her. "We found the roommate's things. We found her scent. But we didn't find her." Anya's blood ran cold. You don't have her?" "The enforcer is good," Ivan said with a sneer. "He hid her well. But we didn't need to find her, did we? We just needed to tell you we found her." Anya staggered back, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. It was a lie. A bluff. Zelia was safe. She was safe with Silas's men. Dante had been right. Anya walked into the warehouse, hands up. "I'm here, let her go." But Zelia wasn't there, only the Gerdev capo smiling with yellow teeth. We knew the Don had a new pet. And we knew she'd come running. Chapter 10. The Monster Unleashed. The silence in the Ferrum study was broken by a soft ping from the security console. Dante, who had been staring at the tactical map for an hour, looked up. Silas was already typing. "Perimeter breach," Silas said, his voice tight. "Sector 4. The pedestrian gate." Dante felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He stood up and walked to the monitors. "Show me." Silas rewound the footage. There, in grainy night vision, was a small figure slipping the Dvorchek through the gate. A figure with a backpack. A figure he would know anywhere. Anya. Dante didn't explode. He didn't shout. He imploded. The air in the room seemed to vanish, sucked into the vacuum of his rage. "She went to them," he whispered. "The little fool went to them." "She thinks she's saving her friend," Silas said, grabbing his tactical vest. "She's walking into a slaughter." Dante grabbed his jacket. He ignored the pull of the scar tissue on his side. He ignored the fact that he was still recovering. He checked the magazine of his sidearm. Full. He grabbed a second gun from the rack. "Cancel the midnight strike," Dante ordered, his voice low and demonic. "We go now." "But the team isn't assembled." "I said we go now," Dante roared, turning on Silas. The mask of the civilized Don slipped, revealing the feral animal beneath. "I am not waiting for a team. I am going to get her. And God help anyone who stands in my way." In the warehouse, Anya was on her knees. One of the guards had struck her across the face when she tried to run. Her lip was split, the copper taste of blood filling her mouth. Her hands were zip-tied behind her back. Ivan paced in front of her, holding a knife. "So," he said casually, testing the blade against his thumb, "you patched him up. You saved the Iron Wolf." Anya didn't answer. She glared at him, defiance burning through her fear. "He was dead," Ivan spat. "My men put a blade in his heart. He was dead. And you, a nobody. You interfered with destiny." He grabbed her hair, yanking her head back, the blade pressed against her throat. "Where is he hiding the money, Anya? The accounts, the codes. He talks to you." "He doesn't tell me anything," Anya choked out. "I'm just the vet." Ivan sighed. "That's a shame. I was hoping to do this quickly. Now I have to peel you apart to see what you know." He raised the knife. Anya squeezed her eyes shut. She thought of Zelia. Safe. She thought of Dante. She hoped he would forgive her for being stupid. She hoped he wouldn't come. "Don't come, Dante, please. Don't come. It's a trap." The sound of a vehicle engine roaring outside cut through the silence. It wasn't slowing down. It was accelerating. Yvonne looked up, confused. "What the—" Crash. The metal loading bay doors dissolved. A black armored SUV smashed through the corrugated steel like it was paper, flying into the warehouse in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. It skidded sideways, slamming into a stack of crates, crushing one of the guards instantly. Dust and smoke billowed into the air, choking the light. Ivan scrambled back, coughing. "Kill them! Kill everyone!" The remaining guards raised their rifles toward the smoking vehicle, but the driver's side door didn't open. The sunroof did. A shadow emerged from the smoke. Dante Ferrum didn't take cover. He stood up through the sunroof, a gun in each hand, and unleashed hell. Bang! 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 The shots were deafening in the enclosed space. 2 guards dropped before they could even pull their triggers. Dante vaulted off the hood of the car, landing in a crouch. He moved with a speed that defied physics. A blur of black violence. A guard charged him. Dante didn't shoot. He stepped inside the guard's reach, grabbed the barrel of the rifle, and snapped the man's arm with a sickening crunch. He used the screaming man as a human shield as another guard opened fire. Anya watched, wide-eyed, through the haze of dust. This wasn't the man who had let her change his bandages. This wasn't the man who had sipped scotch on the balcony. This was the Iron Wolf. He was a hurricane of destruction. He moved through the warehouse, clearing the room with brutal efficiency. He took a bullet to the shoulder, his good shoulder, and didn't even flinch. He just turned and put a round between the shooter's eyes. Silas and the rest of the Ferrum team poured in through the breach a moment later, mopping up the resistance, but Dante didn't wait for them. He had one target, Yvonne. The Jerdev capo had grabbed Anya, hauling her up by her zip ties. He pressed the knife into her neck, drawing a thin line of blood. "Stop!" Yvonne screamed, his voice cracking with terror. "Stop, or I cut her throat!" Dante froze. He stood 20 feet away, his chest heaving. His shirt was torn, blood soaking through the white fabric. His eyes were black pits of absolute murder. "Let her go, Ivan," Dante said. His voice wasn't a shout. It was a whisper that carried across the room. "You drop the guns!" Yvonne shrieked, backing away, dragging Anya with him. "Back off! I'll kill her. I swear to God I'll kill her." Dante looked at Anya. He saw the bruise on her cheek. He saw the blood on her neck. Something inside him snapped. The last tether to his humanity severed. He dropped the guns. Yvonne blinked, surprised. "Good. Now kick them over to—" Dante didn't kick them. He pulled a knife from his belt, a jagged, serrated combat knife, and he started walking. Yvonne's eyes widened. "Stay back." Dante didn't run. He walked. A steady, inevitable march of death. Yvonne panicked. He thrust the knife at Anya's neck. Anya, fueled by pure adrenaline, stomped on Yvonne's foot with her heel and threw her weight backward. It wasn't enough to escape, but it was enough to throw Ivan off balance for a split second. That second was all Dante needed. He lunged. The warehouse doors had exploded inward moments ago, but now the world seemed to narrow to a single point of impact. Through the smoke, Dante walked in, a gun in each hand. But now, empty-handed, he didn't look like a man anymore. He looked like the devil coming to collect a soul. He slammed into Ivan, knocking him away from Anya. They hit the concrete hard. Yvonne slashed wildly, catching Dante across the forearm, but Dante didn't care. He grabbed Ivan's wrist and slammed it against the floor, shattering the bone. The knife skittered away. Dante stood up, dragging Ivan with him by the throat. He lifted the man off the ground with one hand. "You touched her!" Dante snarled, his face inches from the capo's. "Please," Yvonne gurgled. Dante didn't show mercy. He threw Ivan across the room, The capo hit a steel pillar with a bone-breaking thud and slid to the floor, unmoving. Dante turned to Anya. He was covered in blood. His own. Ivan's, the guard's. He looked terrifying. "Anya," he breathed, stepping toward her. Anya didn't see the monster. She saw the man who had come for her. "Dante." She ran to him. He caught her with his good arm, burying his face in her neck. He was shaking. The adrenaline was crashing and the pain was catching up. "I've got you," he gasped. "I've got you." Chapter 11. The Blood Price. "Boss," Silas shouted from the doorway. "We have incoming. More Zerdevs. We need to move." Dante pulled back from Anya. He swayed on his feet. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. Anya looked down at his side. The fresh white shirt he had put on earlier was saturated with red. "Your stitches," she whispered, horror flooding her chest. "You tore them open." "Move!" Dante barked, shoving her toward the SUV. They scrambled into the battered vehicle. The windshield was shattered, the side panels riddled with bullet holes, but the engine was still running. Silas jumped into the driver's seat. Dante and Anya fell into the back. "Go!" Dante yelled. Silas slammed the accelerator. The SUV lurched forward, tires squealing on the concrete. They burst out of the back of the warehouse just as 3 black sedans screeched into the lot, opening fire. Bullets pinged off the armored chassis like hail. Silas swerved, taking a corner on 2 wheels, driving like a madman through the labyrinth of the industrial district. In the back seat, the war was different. Dante had slumped against the door. His eyes were half closed. His hand was pressed against his side, but the blood was flowing too fast. It was pouring over his fingers, soaking the leather seat. "Dante," Anya cried, climbing over the center console to get to him. She ripped the hem of her shirt, wadding it up. "Move your hand," Dante groaned, his head lulling. "It's okay. Just a scratch." "It's not a scratch." "You've reopened the intercostal artery. You're hemorrhaging." She pressed the makeshift compress against the wound with all her weight. Dante cried out, a weak, strangled sound. "Silas!" Anya screamed at the front. "He's bleeding out. We need a hospital." "Can't," Silas shouted, swerving to avoid a dumpster. "We have a tail. I can't stop." Anya looked at Dante. He was fading fast. His skin was gray. His lips were white. The light behind his eyes was dimming. "Dante, look at me," Anya commanded, slapping his cheek lightly. "Stay awake." He looked at her. A small, bloody smile touched his lips. "You came for me," he whispered. "You came for me first, you idiot," Anya sobbed, pressing harder on the wound. "I was angry," he murmured, his speech slurring. "Locked you in to keep you safe. Sorry." "Don't apologize. Just breathe." The car hit a pothole, jarring them violently. Dante coughed, and blood bubbled past his lips. Internal bleeding. The impact of the fight must have caused trauma beyond the stitches. Anya felt his pulse under her fingers. It was thready, fast, erratic. "Anya!" "Shut up! Save your energy! I need to tell you." "No, you can tell me later." He reached up, his bloody hand cupping her cheek. He left a smear of crimson on her skin. "You are the only thing I ever loved." "Dante, no!" His eyes rolled back. His hand fell from her face. His chest stopped rising. "Dante!" Anya checked his pulse. Nothing. "He's flatlining!" Anya screamed. "Silas, stop the car!" "I can't." "Stop the damn car or he dies right now." The sheer panic in her voice broke through Silas's tactical programming. He slammed on the brakes. The SUV skidded to a halt in the shelter of a dark underpass, the engine idling. "Cover us," Silas shouted, jumping out with his rifle to hold off any pursuers. Anya didn't wait. She grabbed Dante's shoulders and hauled him flat onto the bench seat. There was barely room. It was awkward. She climbed on top of him, straddling his hips. She interlaced her fingers. She placed the heel of her hand on his sternum. "Stay with me," she screamed, pressing her hands into his chest. 1, 2, 3, 4. She pumped hard. Ribs cracked under her hands. She didn't care. Broken ribs healed. Dead men didn't. Come on, Dante, fight! She breathed into his mouth, the taste of copper and scotch. Pump, pump, pump. I told you. I'd burn the world for you, he had said. Don't you dare leave me here alone in the ashes, Anya sobbed, pumping harder. Nothing. He was still. Please, God, please. I'll do anything. I'll pay the debt. I'll stay. Just bring him back. She slammed her fist into his chest in frustration. Thump. A gasp. Dante's body arched. He sucked in a ragged, desperate breath. His eyes flew open, blind and panicked for a second before they found hers. Anya collapsed on top of him, weeping uncontrollably. His heart was beating. It was weak. It was fluttering, but it was beating. He smiled, blood staining his teeth. I told you. I'd burn the world for you. Then his eyes rolled back, and he slipped into unconsciousness, but this time his chest kept rising. Drive, Anya whispered to Silas. Get us home. Chapter 12. The Resolution. 2 weeks later. The autumn leaves had turned to winter frost. The Ferrum estate was quiet, covered in a thin blanket of snow. Anya stood in the guest room, zipping up her suitcase. It was time. Dante had survived. He had spent 4 days in a coma, and another week in the ICU set up in the east wing of the house. He had surgeons, real ones this time, flying in from Switzerland. He didn't need a vet tech anymore. The war with the Jerdevs was over. Silas had finished what Dante started at the warehouse. The Jerdev leadership was decimated. The threat was gone. And so was Anya's reason for being here. She had paid her debt. She had been the bait. She had saved the Dawn. They were square. She looked around the room. She would miss the soft bed. She would miss the library. She would miss the dogs. But most of all, she would miss him. She hadn't seen him since the night in the car. Silas said he was resting, that he shouldn't be disturbed. Anya took the hint. The Don was back on his throne, and the little vet was dismissed. She picked up her bag and walked to the door. Going somewhere? The voice stopped her. She turned. Dante was standing in the hallway. He was leaning on a cane, favoring his left side, but he was upright. He wore a crisp black suit, immaculate, as always, though he looked thinner. His eyes, however, were burning with the same intensity that had terrified her in the alley. Dante, she breathed. You're walking. I heal fast, he said. Where are you going? Home, Anya said, gripping the handle of her suitcase. Or to find a new home. Zelia and I are looking for a place. You secured my old building, but it's a wreck. You have a home, Dante said. Anya shook her head. This isn't my home, Dante. This is your fortress. And I'm just the girl who fixed you up. The debt is paid. We're even? Even? Dante laughed softly. He walked toward her, the cane clicking on the hardwood floor. He stopped inches from her. You think we're even? You saved my life twice. You walked into a trap for me. You brought me back from the dead in the back of a car. That's what friends do, Anya said weakly. Friends. He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out 2 things. First, a thick envelope. He handed it to her. What is this? Your father's debt ledger, he said. The Jerdevs are gone, Anya. Their books are mine, and I say this debt is canceled. He placed a second document on top of it, and this is the title deed to the building on 5th Street, the one that houses Paws and Claws Veterinary Clinic. Anya's mouth fell open. You bought the clinic? I bought the building. You own the clinic. You're the landlord now. No more rent. No more debt. Tears pricked her eyes. Dante, I can't accept this. It's too much. It's nothing, he said. It's paper. He held up the second item. It was a set of keys. Not to the clinic. To the estate. This, he said, holding them out. This is the offer. Anya looked at the keys. You're free, Anya, Dante said softly. The dead is burned. You can take the clinic and go. Live a normal life. Find a nice man who doesn't bleed on your rug. Anya looked up at him. She saw the vulnerability masked behind his stoic face. He was giving her an out. He was terrified she would take it. Or? She asked. Or? He stepped closer, discarding the cane. He winced, but he didn't stop. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her flush against him. Or you stay. You keep the clinic. You keep the dogs. And you keep the monster. Anya dropped her suitcase. It hit the floor with a thud. She reached up, tracing the line of his jaw, the scar she had stitched closed. You're not a monster, Dante. I am, he murmured, leaning his forehead against hers. But for you, I can be a man. He handed her the keys to the clinic, pressing them into her palm. You saved the animal, Anya. Now, will you keep him? Anya looked at the man who had kidnapped her, threatened her, and then burned the world to save her. She thought about her quiet, lonely life before the rain. And she thought about the fire she felt when she was with him. There was no choice. There never had been. She dropped her suitcase and kissed him. Only if he behaves. Dante smiled against her lips. A wicked, beautiful promise. I make no guarantees.